And he said, if you don't come home, I'm going to ruin your life. And a couple nights later, after I had taken a shower and put my son to bed, there was a terrible noise at the front door of the house. I'd been reunited with my mother, who lived in Illinois, and I was talking to her on the phone, and there was a banging on the door. And I said, Mom, I gotta let you go. There's somebody here. And I was in my nightgown, and I ran to the bedroom where my son was asleep. And I could hear the owners of the house yelling. And I heard someone yell my name, and I thought, oh my God, he found me. But I went out of the bedroom, and it was the police. It was the SWAT team. The SWAT team had surrounded the house, and they said, are you Gina Cedarwall? And I said, yes. And they came and handcuffed me. It was late at night. They took me out and walked me across the yard, pushed me on top of a patrol car, handcuffed me and patted me down. And I said to the woman whose house I was staying at, I asked her to take care of my son, because clearly in my head there was some, like, I could fix this. Whatever it was a mistake, and I'd be back. I'd be right back tonight before Lane woke up, before my son woke up. And they took me straight to the jail, stripped me, searched me. I still had no idea why I was being arrested. They put me in suicide watch, which basically is isolation. And I lost track of time at that point. My mother was contacted by one of my friends, and she flew to Virginia the next morning to get my son, to protect him, because a lawyer had told me that in the state of Virginia, possession was 9/10 of the law. And if his biological father, although we were never married, had come and taken him, he would just be gone, and there would be nothing that I could do. So she came and got him. She'd never flown before. She'd never met her grandson. She didn't even know that I'd had him. And a couple days later, after sitting in isolation alone, I was questioned by detectives. And they were friendly, and of course, so was I. And it was like a nice conversation. They asked me questions about my son, and they asked me questions about my boyfriend, and I told them about the abuse and the reasons that I had left. And they asked, well, did you get any help? If you were that abused, if you were that scared, did you get any help? And I said, well, yeah. I told my boss at work about it, and she helped me so that I could escape. And they said, no, did you get any professional help? I said, well, I talked to a legal assistant that I had at work, to a lawyer, and she told me without more bruises or any evidence, there was nothing I could do. She said anyone could say someone beat them. And I said, so you're telling me I'd be better off if I had let him beat me more? And she said, yeah, then maybe I could help you. So I didn't have any real assistance. The lawyer gave me a business card for counseling service, and that was all she did for me, and I did not take her up on that, because at that point I was starting to lose faith in those kinds of services. And so because I didn't get help, and because the lawyer didn't believe me, and because I joked and was friendly and did everything they said and answered all their questions, they reported back to the state of Virginia that I was absolutely guilty of of the crime I had been accused of. That's when I learned what my crime was. My boyfriend, when I wouldn't return to him, called the police, and he reported that the miscarriage I'd had 5 years earlier was not a miscarriage. He said it was a live birth that I had killed with my own hands. I'd kept the miscarriage secret a lot because of my upbringing. I was from a big Catholic family. We didn't discuss things like that. And I had actually never known I was pregnant. It was traumatic on many levels because of that. I didn't know I was pregnant. I didn't know what was happening to me in my college apartment when I had the miscarriage. It was devastating, and I never wanted to talk about it. And honestly, it was a private medical trauma that I shouldn't have had to discuss. So I was officially charged with murder at that time without any evidence. Illinois was the prosecuting state, but I was living in Virginia. So I was extradited in a cage on a van, shackled and overcrowded and deprived of food and water and hygiene for 10 days. That's how long it took us to drive from Virginia to Illinois. We would get closer, we'd turn around and go to another prison to pick up or drop off more. It was a privatized, unfortunately, I feel like it's probably still operated the same way, private company, a prisoner transport company. We were treated like livestock, basically. And the guards or drivers would provoke fights amongst the inmates. They had us packed and chained together. I was always the only female on board, so sometimes I would be chained inside a cage for my own protection, they said. So I'd be in a cage as big as my body and without anything to drink. They didn't want to stop to go to the bathroom. So for meals, we were given one McDonald's hamburger and a small cup of water twice a day. The state of Illinois at the time was the state with the highest rate of wrongful convictions. And the media was calling me the murdering mommy. And the DA was looking to make an example of me. They said they wanted to punish me to the highest extent of the law because I showed no remorse. But the point, how could I show remorse for a crime that never happened? What I thought I was doing was exactly how I was raised, to be compliant and respectful of authority, answering questions, even being friendly, because that's how I was raised to be. And they said not only was I guilty, I was unremorseful because I didn't act how an abused person should act according to them. I didn't make the choices that someone who was beaten and threatened for years, I didn't make the choices they thought they would make. So therefore, they had already decided I was guilty before I even made it to the jail in Macon County. The DA had called me a black widow, which I'm not sure whether they likened me to a minister's daughter who is a hellraiser, because my father was actually a corrections officer at the jail where I was being held. I couldn't get out on bail because my bail was at $3 million. I couldn't hold my son. I had to see him through a window on visiting day. He was less than a year old. I missed his first birthday. I missed his first steps. I missed his first haircut. I had to hide my identity behind bars because you don't want to go into jail with everyone knowing you're the baby killer. It was going to be a groundbreaking case, murder without a body. It was all he said, she said, of course, but I think the fact that I said that I was beaten, and they said, well, anyone can say that. I wasn't taken by my word, yet this man who had been in and out of jail and had also filed false accusations on other people over the years, including his own sister, he was able to call the police and just say, I'm worried about the safety of my son because my girlfriend did this horrible thing. That was taken as fact with absolutely no evidence. They did take in my the father of the miscarried child. They questioned him. According to my attorneys, they questioned him for hours and hours, and he said it was a miscarriage. It was a miscarriage. It was a miscarriage. And they said, we know what really happened. And if you just cooperate, she's already trying to pin it on you. If you just cooperate and tell us that this was her, then we can let you go. And suddenly his story changed. And he's like, you're right. She did this. She killed him. I wasn't even home. I wasn't there. I had nothing to do with it. And so he was released, and the story continued from there. My family is getting hate mail and shunned and treated poorly, even at church and in the grocery stores. And I hadn't seen my family in years. And the fact that they rallied behind me and came forward to stand behind me and support me was tremendous. And they were protecting my son and keeping him safe. But I'm behind bars, and I cannot protect my son from my abuser, who is coming forward and saying he wants full custody. So now we have 2 court cases going on. We have my murder trial, and then we also have a custody battle. They tried to keep them separate. They had different judges, different courthouses, and so I'm being taken to custody trial in handcuffs while he's going to in front of the judge free. And he said, when he was asked if he had abused me, he said, no, he never laid a hand on me. He said, actually, I abused him. And the judge, after the judge heard both sides, and a couple of his family members came forward to testify on my behalf, which helped tremendously. He said, there is no way I'm going to give this child to the father as long as the mother is free to take care of him. Excuse me. And that's when I said to myself, I have to get out of here, no matter what it takes. And when the DA came and offered a plea bargain, my attorney said, don't take it. He said, they would not offer you a plea bargain if they had any evidence against you. At this point, I had a doctor, a medical professional coming forward to testify on my behalf that there was, after examining me and looking at my records of birth of having my son, they said that there was no way this was a viable birth and that I couldn't have been more than a few months or 4 months pregnant. There was no way that it could have survived. And she was willing to go on the stand and testify as such. They said, don't take the plea bargain. And I said, it's the only way, my only guarantee that I will be free. They said if I take the plea bargain to a lesser felony, they wanted a charge, they wanted some kind of conviction, so I was still going to be a felon. If I accepted a plea bargain to concealment of a homicide that never happened, that I would be free, that I would just have 6 months of jail time, which I'd already served, and 2 years of probation, which they would transfer to the state of Virginia so I could go back home. And I would keep my son. My family did not want me to take this for many reasons. I mean, why would you confess guilt to something that you hadn't done? But some things are much more important than being right. And at this point, what was important was my child. I lost the right to grieve the miscarried child, and I was not going to lose the right to fight for this one. I accepted the plea bargain. It ripped my family apart, and the entire process emotionally and financially ruined everyone. My brother went bankrupt. And of course, the legal fees alone were tremendous. When I finally was out on bail, it was on $70,000 instead of $3 million, which in 1998, even now, is a lot of money. And those newspapers and that had me in headlines as a strangling mother. When I accepted a plea bargain, what they reported was that Cedarwalt confessed guilty. I have not pursued exoneration. My mother's been gone now for 10 years. She wanted so much for me to tell my story. And she said she would not rest until I was exonerated. My understanding is in the state of Illinois, when you accept a plea bargain, you accept guilt. So I'm not able to be exonerated. However, that would be an ultimate goal. And I'll tell you, it's not something that I originally thought I wanted. Because to me, they labeled me a felon. When you are charged with and convicted with a felony, you lose your civil rights. I think most people equate that with the loss of the right to vote, which is very true. But it's a lot more than that. It is the loss of being able to get financial assistance, housing grants, educational assistance, to bear arms. There's a lot that goes along with the loss of civil rights. It's almost equatable to the loss of being human or being treated as a human. And for many years, my children didn't know I was a felon because I wanted to be able to, for them not to pay the price for the choices that I made. And so they didn't know until they were adults. But my daughter used to say, "Why don't you go to vote? Why don't you go with Dad to vote?" And I felt so bad that what I ended up doing was minimizing how important our rights are as citizens. And I said, I would make up things like, oh, I don't pay attention to politics. I don't think my vote matters. And I was given such the wrong message to my own children. But then my husband is a very wise man. He said, if you don't give people the chance to make things right, nothing will ever get better. And I thought about that, and that's when I worked harder to get my civil rights restored and jumped some hurdles, but made that happen. So you know what? I think anything's capable as long as you have the support of others. You can make great things happen. When I finally had my civil rights restored, that just happened in October, right before the election. My daughter and I, she's 25 now, we went to vote together. And I was so proud to take part in that with her. Because I'll tell you, when we neglect one right or step aside and say it doesn't really matter, what we're doing is we're making it easier for them to take more away from us. And it wasn't until my daughter reached the age that I was, the night that I was arrested and chained to a bench in my nightgown in a police station, when she reached that age, and as laws changing for increased restrictions on women's rights and placing them less than human rights, my fear for my own daughter's future made me think, I need to get my story out there. I need people to hear this message. And also, I want her to see my strength to give. And I mean, I'm going to go back to what my mother used to say. She said, this is not about you. That's why she didn't want me to accept the guilty plea. She said, this is not about you. This is everyone's story. This is not just your story. And she's right. I mean, it's about everyone's daughter, mother, sister. It's about all of us. It's everyone's story. And I bring back out of jail many stories of women just like me. And I by no means am extraordinary. I am very ordinary. And if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. And so since that realization hit me, I've been working harder to get this message out there, because it's a message of hope and of the resilience and strength that we all have. And I co-formed a small film production company that's female-driven, and we work hard to develop female empowerment. And I've written articles about what I've been through, and I've also written a memoir that I'm currently pitching. And I hope that in the end that we can just improve things for not just survivors of domestic violence, but also inmate treatment and the way the justice views and deals with trauma survivors in general. He's done several jail stints. He's been arrested for other domestic charges, not by me, but even after I went to court with him, when his sister testified against him, he went home and reported his sister for child abuse, and she was investigated as a result of her coming forward to help me. I do keep in touch with his sister periodically, not a lot, just because it brings me comfort to know where he is. And she'll tell me when he's been arrested or, you know, whatever's going on with him. He's still in the state where I fled. And I think he's had a pretty crappy life. I think there's nothing more that I would do.